Welcome back to another Gaming Memories video. Here we are taking a look at Duke Nukem 3D, or it was Duke Nukem Total Meltdown outside of Europe. And this is a iconic FPS shooter game that was released in 1996. It was released for the PlayStation, the Sega Saturn and on the PC. And it's considered one of the most iconic FPS games ever made, and quite rightly so. I'll be honest, I remember playing this back in the day, and I remember when it first came out I actually wanted to play it, but I never got the chance to. It was a couple of months in before I ever got the chance to play it. And this here is actually one of my all-time favourite games on the PlayStation. It's one of my all-time favourite FPS games ever, on any format. And I've played it pretty much across the board. I've played it on Sega Saturn, I've played it on the PlayStation, I've played it on the PC. The PC does have more options available because you have access to the modding community, which uses the game's original game engine using the build engine. And people today still mod and create levels for the game, which is awesome. But each variation of the console, even on the Nintendo 64, got its own version. And they all had their own unique levels or campaigns that were only associated to that specific console, and the PlayStation was no different. Now, my first experience with Duke Nukem was essentially on the PlayStation, because at the time that was all I had access to, and it was the console I was playing all the time anyway, so it was a perfect fit. I remember it was around the time we actually got Grand Theft Auto, and I remember that Duke Nukem was heavily being promoted at that time as well, because they were out not too long apart from each other. And I knew I wanted to get this game for quite a while, but I remember then I managed to get it a few months later, and it had come down in price, and I think I got it for like £20, Irish pounds at the time. And this was in actually midway, I think summer 1998. I actually managed to get my hands on it, and I wasn't disappointed. Yes, I will admit it is easier to play on the likes of the PC because you can use the mouse and stuff like that. The control system on the PlayStation definitely leaves a lot to be desired, because it can be very, very fiddly and twitchy. But when you get the hang of it, this game is actually a blast, and it's such a fun game. Plus, the PlayStation version actually, even to this day, in my opinion, it actually has the best version of the original soundtrack compared to any other version. Even the PC version, which would have been more high-end, doesn't have as good of a musical score or soundtrack as the PlayStation does. The PlayStation soundtrack was totally re-recorded for this version of the game, and it still stands to this game even today, because the sound effects, everything was so much better. It was actually properly recorded, and it's evident from when you actually play through the first level. And again, now this game, it is difficult to play, like I said, to get into, and it is definitely more adult based, because it's definitely not for kids. But this game was so much fun, because I remember actually playing Doom originally, and Doom is a brilliant game, but Doom is different. This here is definitely a lot more different than Doom. There's definitely a lot more visual elements and detail in this compared to Doom at the time. But then Doom at the same time was 3 or 4 years old at this stage, at the time when this game was released. But again, this game here is awesome, and it's very similar. You can go around, kill as many bad guys or aliens that are around the levels, and then you can hunt down for hidden secrets. You always have to get to an end point at the end of the level in order to proceed to the next level, and each campaign has their own set of levels within the game. In the PlayStation version, there's 4 campaigns in it, and they're all unique. They all have their own kind of similar, kind of like a somewhat of a story. There is and there isn't as much of a story to the game, but the character of Duke Nukem itself, this was my first introduction properly to the character, and it was just this game is just actually hilarious, even as difficult and all as it is. Duke Nukem, the voiceovers and everything, even the character is it's hilarious, because just literally takes the mick out of everything and everybody, and doesn't take himself seriously. So the goal of the game is really you're hunting down the aliens to kill them all, but at the same time you're trying to save all the females as well that have all been kidnapped by the likes of the aliens and stuff. But there's loads of like cheeky kind of one-liners and innuendos in this game. There's definitely adult theme. Like here you can even go to the toilet as well and flush the toilet, and it actually gives you health back. That's this game was actually very controversial for its time, I will definitely admit, but this game was definitely a blast. If you're into first person shooters at all, you have to play Duke Nukem. Whether if not on the PlayStation, definitely on any format that you can get your hands on it. It even has been in recent years been re-released for modern consoles like of Xbox One and PlayStation 4. So it's like 20th anniversary edition that was released back in 2016, and it has all these levels apart from the likes of the last campaign, Plug and Pray campaign that was exclusive to the PlayStation 1. That campaign actually isn't in it, but it has all the other campaigns from the PC version, and then some extra levels as well. So it is definitely quite a good game to play. So regardless of what version of the game you're playing, I highly recommend that you actually give Duke Nukem a go. Again, it's very cheeky, a lot of innuendos, a lot of adult themed kind of content and humour, but that's what adds to the appeal of this game. And I remember actually going back when I actually did play this. I remember actually my first experience actually was I rented it out actually one weekend, and myself and my brothers and my mates actually played it. But to be honest, we were more looking for the adult themed kind of stuff than we were looking for anything else, because it was definitely something at that stage. Because at the time when I was playing it, I was only like 15. So again, you were at that very impressionable age. So anything like that there, straight away you wanted to play it or have a piece of it, like. So, but again, this game was just hilarious. It was so much fun, and you've like it's an insane amount of weapons, like say from rocket launchers to shotguns to machine guns, even to freeze rays where you can freeze enemies and then you can kick them and they just shatter apart, or even your shrink rays that you can shrink the enemies and you can stand on them and squish them, and it's just absolutely insane. The thing is as well with this game, because the controls could be very fiddly compared to the likes of the PC version, you would get yourself killed an awful lot, because you'd be in a room and you'd be surrounded by enemies and you'd forget yourself and you'd have a rocket launcher, and of course quite naturally you'd always end up trying to shoot somebody and you'd end up shooting the wall and killing yourself, or yeah, just literally killing yourself pretty much all the time. And in these games as well, back in the day, there was no room for pretty much error. If you made any sort of mistake and you didn't save it in the meantime, you'd have to start the whole level all over again, and literally you'd lose all your weapons and all your progress and everything. So that's, yeah, the one consolation is the PlayStation did have a quick save feature. So it did. You could save the game manually, it'd take a while for it to load up, but you could use a quick save, which was grand as well. So it kind of got you out of a rut if you were stuck, especially if you were in some tricky areas where you were struggling to get past certain phases or enemies that kept destroying you. The only downside with that, as soon as you knocked the game off, you would lose that save, so you had to actually make sure you manually saved your file to the memory card for it to be playable then the next time you loaded the game up. Now, the levels actually vary in difficulty. Some levels are quite short, others are actually long enough, and then you've a mix then of a load of hidden and secret levels as well that you can find when you can access them through like hidden areas that you wouldn't normally see throughout normal play. You'd actually have to go looking to actually find them. That was the one thing I absolutely loved about this game, was the fact that there was every time you played the game there was always something kind of new to learn, and especially if you love exploration, this game was brilliant for that. And then added in like with the humour, this game pretty much for me had it all. It had the humour, it had all the innuendos, all the cheeky kind of gags, and then the action, the music, and like I say the gameplay and the exploration. It was definitely for me an all-in-one, definitely an excellent game. Now I know that it's not the best version of this game. The PC version would be considered the ultimate version of it, but this here was still fantastic for back in the day. As long as you get used to the controls, you could change some of the control setups on the likes of in the menus. But back then, because this came out roughly around the time when there was the PlayStation, there was only like the analog controller was only just kind of being released. There was no real DualShock controllers at that stage, and again the control styles of FPS games weren't catered for, not like games today where you can use the shoulder buttons to shoot and analog sticks to literally navigate your character. It was never really that case back then. You used to only, if you could only use one analog stick, it was only ever left one to turn the character, but you could never like strafe left or right. So it always was a bit fiddly trying to figure out the button combinations to literally try and get from point A to point B. And usually 9 times out of 10, by the time you'd actually figure it out, you'd be absolutely destroyed and you'd be dead before you even know what's hit you. But I suppose that was just the fun of it back then. These games were unique for that. They added a lot of challenge, not just in the gameplay, but with everything else as well. Like this game definitely, it's definitely one of my all-time favourite games. It's not perfect, but I still had a blast playing this. And I know a lot of my friends actually did as well. And it's still, even to this day, considered one of the best FPS games of all time. And in my opinion, quite rightly so. Because it offers pretty much everything that you want from a great shooter. Really, really good level design, enemies, loads of really cool secrets, and the fact is, unlike of Doom, you could actually manipulate the environment in certain areas where you could actually destroy certain areas and then like literally click buttons to open up doors. You can pretty much get yourself involved in the environment to find like hidden areas. Like there you can open up like hidden compartments. You could even blow open holes in the walls using explosives as well, which was kind of unheard of. It was one of the first games to really kind of implement that, especially on consoles, so it was definitely unique. Plus it definitely had a lot of adult themed kind of pieces as well, like I mentioned. So yeah, it pretty much catered for every audience. It definitely, well, apart from you definitely couldn't let kids play it back in those days. Yeah, for sure. Because I remember even my folks even asking me as well when they were playing the game, like, what is that you're playing? You know, and they'd be asking questions and they'd be like, you shouldn't even be playing that. And I'm like, oh, it's okay. You know, you were kind of telling them anything under the sun just so you could play it for another couple of minutes so they wouldn't ask any more questions. But that was the fun of it back in those days. That was the way these games kind of were, like, so. But yeah. Again, it's not perfect, but in my opinion, it's an awesome game, and it's one of my favourite all-time games, and it always will be. And I still go back to play this game regularly. That's the thing about it. That's how good it is for me. So it's definitely one for the books. So I highly recommend, if you haven't played Duke Nukem, especially Duke Nukem 3D, I highly recommend you give it a go. I know on the PlayStation there is other sequels. There's Time to Kill and Land of the Babes. Now the only downside with them is they're not first person shooters, they're third person action games, more like Tomb Raider. Now they offer their own unique kind of challenge, and they are good games in their own right, but they're nothing compared to this here. This here is the best in the series. It's the best version of any of the Duke Nukem games, even modern games. This here Duke Nukem 3D is definitely hands down the best one, and it's actually never been battered from any of the other games from that standpoint. So it's definitely one for the books. So what are your thoughts on this game? Have you experienced Duke Nukem? Did you have a lot of fun with it as well? If so, make sure to let me know down in the comments, as I'd love to hear your experience that you had with the game. So if you've enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like. Also make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on that bell icon to be updated when I release future videos, as I am going to be releasing future classics or old classics like this here, and experiencing other games I never got the chance to play in the PlayStation back in the day, so that I can have new experiences and share them all with you. So as always, make sure to keep playing those classic games and enjoying them, and make sure to keep those gaming memories alive.